I think we can sneak in one fast question. Yes, please.
Jan Alexander from Institutional Investor. Saudi Arabia has, in the last couple of years, been making a pretty extensive effort to diversify its economy away from oil, and this year, or in 2015, they're planning to open up their stock market to foreign investors, etc. I'm wondering about the extent to which lower oil prices might play into Saudi Arabia's, economic planning.
I'll start.
Okay.
There was one of the reasons I think that there was some happiness about the shale play. There were some senior Saudi figures over the past year who have expressed optimism that shale oil production would force Saudi Arabia to get more serious about diversifying its economy. In essence, that this is an example of things that come out of nowhere that can upset what looked like a pretty good business model. I can't speak specifically to how well or how deep the diversification has gone, but it's been a rhetorical goal for years now. I don't know that I own anything manufactured in Saudi Arabia, other than perhaps a lot of petroleum. Exactly.
Saudi Arabia, so without pretending to know details of what's happening in Saudi Arabia, I think Mike points to an important dynamic, which is that lower oil prices can create pressure for reforms that were useful anyhow, but that leaders were unable to take for a variety of reasons. In some places, the pressure is so large and the resources are limited in a way that this is not an opportunity, this is something to be managed. And Brazil is a great example of that. Somewhere a month or two ago, I would have said Brazil is in a good place where it's nervous enough with lower oil prices that it can go about fixing how it's handling its oil development and other issues, but it has the breathing room to actually do this kind of thing. I think now it's crisis management or not crisis management, that's too much, but it's management of the situation. Saudi Arabia has an enormous amount of money in the bank, right? So they can weather this kind of storm. They could sit with the current oil price for a long time, measured in many years, while still keeping their budget at its current level based on what they have in the bank. And that means that they do have that flexibility to deal with current circumstances. Whether they will, this is one of those ones that one ought to ask a Saudi Arabia expert rather than an energy expert about.
Well, I'll just add two things to those comments. Exactly as Michael says, they do have substantial resources, so I suspect any long-term strategic economic planning, whether it's the economic cities in various parts of Saudi Arabia, this can go forward, no problem. They will go forward precisely because they are strategic objectives. The second point is that in addition to diversification, to some degree, they're also just trying to move up the petroleum value chain, petrochemicals, especially refining, so on. Some of that involves external investment. A lot of that involves investment inside Saudi, but it's still in the oil complex. So it's still exposed to the fall in oil prices, but important, as we've heard with respect to Mexico, the main consumers of much Saudi product in the future will be Saudi Arabian citizens and other countries in the region, perhaps more so than foreign buyers. And then finally, I think one thing which we spoke about in previous RiskMaps prior to the Arab Spring actually, is that Saudi Arabia chiefly is a country in a region that has to generate 50 million new jobs within a generation just to absorb its growing population. And this is as much about economic diversification away from oil for kind of large picture macroeconomic reasons as it is to maintain political stability in a region where large cohorts of unemployed people has in the very recent past been a big political problem.
All right, we're out of time. Thanks very much to this terrific panel.